We'll move to question time. I'll call Senator Mackenzie.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. The Albanese government has been forced to scrap its disastrous misinformation and internet censorship bill after realising that every single non-Labor senator was going to vote against it. The following criticisms included from distinguished experts like Professor Anne Toomey, who said that she was worried that your government would, and I quote, create worse problems through large-scale censorship of contested views and the undermining of democracy in the name of cleansing it from misinformation. Can the Prime Minister promise the Australian people that he will not reintroduce this bill or any similar bill after the next election?
Thank you, Senator Mackenzie. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator Mackenzie for the question, although I was anticipating a cost of living question, but I'm very happy to respond. In relation to the legislation that the government did withdraw today, and I thank Senator McAllister for her handling of that. What I would say to you, Senator, I think, I would say three things. The first is the minister issued a statement in relation to this on the weekend. Secondly, Senator McAllister, as the representing minister, spoke today about these issues. Obviously, this bill did not have the support of the chamber, which is why the government made its decision to withdraw it. But what I would say to you, Senator, and this is a serious question, our democracy is under threat and at risk. Our democracy is under threat and at risk from foreign interference, foreign disinformation, from misinformation, including, people might remember, Russian bots in campaigns.
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Senator Mackenzie.
Point of order, Madam President, on relevancy, direct relevancy. Does this remain the Prime Minister's policy? Yes or no?
Senator Mackenzie, you forgot the quite large preamble at the beginning of your question, which the minister is being directly relevant to. Thank you, Minister Wong.
I would say again to Senator Mackenzie, there is a serious question about making sure our democracy is resilient in an age where misinformation and disinformation are far more prevalent. And first and foremost, I am a small d Democrat. And I believe in protecting the institutions of our democracy, and I would hope, Senator Mackenzie, so are you. I would hope you do too. And the problem is that there are people, there are elements who wish to use the openness of our society in order to damage the democracy. The democracy does require us to ensure that we do not have misinformation and disinformation fueling risk to who we are and to our institutions.
Thank you, Minister Wong. The time for answering has expired. Senator Mackenzie, first supplementary.
The Australian Greens, whom Labor gives its second preference to every single election, have said that their main reason for voting is that your misinformation bill doesn't go far enough. Will the government rule out any deal with the Greens to reintroduce an expanded misinformation internet censorship bill after the next election?
Thank you, Senator Mackenzie. Minister Wong.
Well, again, I'd say to you, Senator, the government has withdrawn this bill. The government's made clear it is not proceeding with this bill. The government has made clear it's not proceeding with this bill. And if Senator Mackenzie, Senator Cash, you've caused enough trouble recently. Do you think it would be possible for you just to leave this alone? You know exactly what I mean.
Order. Minister Wong, had you please continue.
We are not proceeding with the bill, and I'm advised that it includes not reintroducing this bill. But I'd again say to you, Senator Mackenzie, I'd again say to you, well, you're the one voting with the Greens, mate. Why don't you ask them? You asked me about the Greens. You're the one that voted with them. Why don't you ask them what they'll introduce? You've probably got more knowledge about their policy agenda than we have.
Thank you, Minister Wong. Senator Mackenzie, second supplementary.
Well said. Given the Albanese Labor government can't or won't say whether it will pursue this bill again or if it would do a deal with the Greens following the next election, how are the thousands of Australians who oppose this bill meant to think anything other than it being a delaying tactic by Labor rather than a genuine withdrawal?
Thank you, Senator Mackenzie. Minister Wong.
Well, there's a bit more misinformation. I just said we would not be proceeding with this bill, Senator. I just said that. I've just said that. I'll say it again. We are not proceeding with this bill. We will not be reintroducing this bill. That is what we have said. But what I would say to you, Senator, is we do have to— You are desperate for a scare campaign, aren't you? You really are. You don't want to listen to what I have to say. But what I would say to you, Senator Mackenzie, is there is an issue with disinformation and misinformation in our democracy, and those of us who care about democratic institutions, including the few on those sides who do care about democratic institutions, should work with the government on working out how we protect our democracy against disinformation and misinformation. That would be the responsible thing to do. That would be the responsible thing to do, Senator Mackenzie, and I invite you to be responsible.
Thank you. Senators, before I call you Senator Green, may I remind you that interjections are incredibly disorderly and, quite frankly, yelling louder than the person whose microphone is on is incredibly disorderly. Senator Green.
Thanks, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. I, like all of my colleagues, understand that people are under pressure and that the housing shortage is driving one of the key cost of living challenges that Australians face. What are the consequences of a decade of reckless neglect of housing supply in Australia by the Liberals and Nationals? And how is the Albanese Labor government working to boost the supply of all housing to make it easier and more affordable to rent and buy, including with a $32 billion Homes for Australia plan?
Thank you, Senator Green. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Well, the Albanese Labor government is focused on cost of living relief. We are working to lift wages and to bring down costs. We are working by offering tax cuts and electricity bill relief. We are working to strengthen Medicare and to build more homes. Now, we know Australians are under pressure and there is much more to do. But what we also know, colleagues, is that the Liberals and Nationals are out of touch with the pressure Australians are under. You know how we know that? Because those opposite block every single cost of living measure. They block every single cost of living measure. Mr Dutton's reckless arrogance has real costs. His agenda is wrong for Australia, he is wrong for Australia, and the Greens are not any better. I mean, we see again the Liberals and the Greens voting together to block environment reform, immigration reform and housing reform. There are two more important housing initiatives in the Senate that we are all aware of that the Liberals and the Greens are voting together to block. Help to Buy, a shared equity scheme to help more Australians get into the market, and Build to Rent, which will build tens of thousands of new rental homes for the country. This government has already invested $32 billion in addressing Australia's housing shortage, including helping 120,000 people into their first home sooner, Senator Ruston. Announced 13,700 social and affordable homes from the first round of the Housing Australia Future Fund, increasing the maximum of rent assistance by more than 40% since coming to government. The biggest boost to rent assistance, Senator Ruston, as a former Social Services Minister, you never achieved in 30 years, and an ambitious target of seeing 1.2 million homes built over 5 years. There is no much more to do, but, friends, we're building and they're blocking. They are blocking.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Green, first supplementary.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Minister. Minister, in my home state of Queensland, what work is the Albanese Labor government doing to deliver more social and affordable homes?
Thank you, Senator Green. Minister Wong.
Honorary Queensland.
Order.
Thank you. And the government has made important progress, Senator Green, in helping Queenslanders trying to rent or buy. Through the Housing Australia Future Fund, we're funding 1,315 new dwellings in Queensland in the first round alone. Some $860 million in funding for new homes. Through other initiatives, we are also working to boost supply across the state. 490 social and affordable homes in Cairns, 126 social and affordable homes in Chermside, another 82 new homes in Redcliffe, 81 new social and affordable homes in Woolloongabba, 50 social housing rentals and 32 affordable homes in Stones Corner, Brisbane, 75 new homes in Toowoomba, 25 social housing rentals, 25 affordable, 158 new homes in Southport and 38 social housing rentals in Lutwyche and 42 in Windsor. I'm sure that those opposite would be very pleased to know about the new housing availability in Queensland.
Senator Green, second supplementary.
Thanks, President. Thank you, Minister. Minister, is it true that the Albanese Labor government delivered more support for building new homes in just our last budget than in the entire 9 years of the Liberal and Nationals were in power?
Thank you, Senator Green. Minister Wong.
Thank you, Senator Green. And yes, Senator Green, I regret to say that's true. That's true. In one budget, more than 9 years' worth of coalition. So when you hear them yelling, and I see they're quiet now, when Senator Cash, Senator Ruston, Senator Birmingham and others start shouting about housing, 9 years, 9 years, they had less to do, less to say, less to contribute than we had in one budget. I mean, Mr Dutton's reckless arrogance has real costs. And now, in the middle of a housing crisis, Mr Dutton wants to cut $19 billion from housing. That is what he wants to do. He wants to cut $19 billion for housing. I mean, this Mr Dutton's agenda is wrong for the country and wrong for Australians. He wants to cut $10 billion from the Housing Australia Future Fund, $5.5 billion from the Help to Buy and $3 billion from New Homes Bonus. I mean, this is what Mr Dutton wants to do while he complains about housing affordability.
Senator Cash.
Thank you. And my question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. American President Joe Biden described the decision of the International Criminal Court to issue an arrest warrant for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in the following terms. The ICC issuance of arrest warrants against Israeli leaders is outrageous. Let me be clear once again. Whatever the ICC may imply, there is no equivalence, none, between Israel and Hamas. We will always stand with Israel against threats to its security. Does the Prime Minister agree with our ally President Biden's very strong stance in support of our other democratic ally, Israel?
Thank you, Senator Cash. Minister Wong.
You have heard me say many times in this place, Senator Cash, you've heard me say many times there is no equivalence between Hamas, a terrorist organisation, and the elected Israeli government. In relation to the International Criminal Court, Australia respects the independence of the International Criminal Court and its important role in upholding international law. I'll take the interjection from the Shadow Attorney General. The Shadow Attorney General. Right, she says. Well, Senator, unlike you, we actually believe— I am answering the question. We actually believe that adherence to international law is a matter of principle and it is in Australia's interests. What I would say to you is that I have made clear many times in this place that all parties to the conflict must comply with international law, and I again say we respect the independence of the International Criminal Court and its important role in upholding international law.
Senator Cash, first supplementary.
Thank you. In contrast to President Biden, Albanese Government Minister Ed Husic said the ICC, and I quote, was doing its job by issuing the arrest warrant for Mr Netanyahu. Does the Prime Minister back the US President's view that the arrest warrant was outrageous, or the view of Minister Husic?
Oh, excuse me. Order. The interjections between Senator Whish-Wilson and Senator McKenzie will stop. and they should have stopped when I said order the first time, not the third time. I expect silence when the minister responds. Minister Wong.
Sorry, I wasn't sure that the minister, Senator Cash had finished. First, in relation to the United States is not a party to the Rome Statute. The Rome Statute, which established or gives effect to the International Criminal Court, was in fact ratified by the Howard government in 2002. Since Mr Howard ratified the Rome Statute, we have, as a country, respected the International Criminal Court. This is because it is in our interests as a nation for international law to be upheld. So I would again say to you, Senator, our position is that we respect the independence of the International Court, its important role in upholding international law.
Senator McKenzie, I believe that I am managing the chamber, not you, and your interjection was again unhelpful. Senator Cash, second supplementary.
Thank you. And Minister, is it the intent of the Albanese government to execute any arrest warrant issued by the ICC?
Thank you, Senator Cash. Minister Wong.
I certainly don't propose to speculate on hypotheticals. What I can say to the chamber is that Australia will act consistently with our obligations under international law, and our approach will be informed by international law, not by politics.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Waters.
Thanks very much, President. And my question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Social Services, Minister Farrell. Every week in Australia, women and children suffer at the hands of men. And according to volunteer organisation Counting Dead Women, 66 women have been killed so far this year. We know this is a problem for men to fix. We know that 95% of perpetrators are men. As a male minister of the Albanese government, what are you and all of your male cabinet colleagues personally doing to drive down the rates of violence and change cultural and behavioural attitudes amongst men?
Thank you, Senator Waters. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Waters, for raising an important issue. Well, the short answer, Senator, is everything we can. Everything I can do as an individual, as a man, as a member of the Labor Party, as a minister, as a father of 3 daughters and 1 granddaughter and a wife. I will do everything I can, Senator Waters, and I believe as a government we take this issue very, very seriously. Family and domestic violence is a very terrible scourge on our society. One death is one death too many in this space. And as a government and as a man, we completely reject domestic violence. We have to act, I think, as a community to try and resolve this terrible, terrible issue. It's not an easy issue to resolve, Senator Waters, and I think I would speak for every male standing behind me that we all want to see an end to this scourge of domestic violence. As a government, we're of course investing in a whole range of programs that are designed to try and reduce the impact of domestic violence. And I know
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Waters, first supplementary.
Thanks, President. There have been 12 First Nations women killed just since June. 8 of those women were in the Northern Territory. The government is late in responding to the missing and murdered First Nations women and children inquiry recommendations, which went to making police interactions more culturally safe and centring the voices of First Nations women to shape solutions and collect better data. Will you implement these recommendations in full, and when?
Thank you, Senator Waters. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Waters, for your first supplementary question. Well, of course, we work very assuredly in this space. I work with Senator McCarthy to ensure that we address all of these issues. Again, I make the point. Like it or not, these are not difficult. These are difficult issues to resolve. They're difficult issues to resolve quickly. What we have tried to do as a government, whatever the issue might have been, is to take action, practical steps to make life better in this space. And
thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Waters, second supplementary.
Thanks, President. The women's safety sector has long called for $1 billion per year to meet demand for frontline services so that they have the resourcing to help everyone who reaches out for help. Will the government finally commit at least $1 billion per year to address the epidemic of men's violence against women with the urgency that it requires?
Thank you, Senator Waters. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator Waters for her second supplementary question. The government, of course, has committed $7.7 billion in funding for gender-based violence and legal assistance over our 2.5 years in government. This is on top of almost $2 billion to expand the single-parent payment, which provides critical financial support for women and children escaping violence, and over $10 billion to expand social and affordable housing and crisis accommodation, which we know is crucial, so that women have a place to go. Funding for frontline services has traditionally been the responsibility of the states and territories. But at National Cabinet, we extended our funding for the National Partnership Agreement to provide long-term funding certainty for frontline services and leverage hundreds of millions.
Minister Farrell, the time for answering has expired. Senator Walsh.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. The Albanese Labor government is strengthening the economy and delivering cost of living relief for all Australians. We have delivered tax cuts, energy bill relief, urgent care clinics, cheaper medicines and university debt relief, whilst the Liberals and Nationals have rejected every cost of living measure we have put forward. What have the Minister and the Treasurer done to provide responsible cost of living relief that does not add to the inflation challenge in the economy?
Thank you, Senator Walsh. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator Walsh for that question and for the focus on cost of living measures that the government has been putting in place over the last 2.5 years. This is a government that has been working hard to get wages up and inflation down. We're strengthening Medicare, building more houses, and we can make reforms such as these because we're focused on building a stronger economy. Back-to-back surpluses, lower government debt are important indicators that we are on the right track. We're focused on reducing inflation. It's halved since we came to government, with cost of living policies such as energy bill relief driving inflation down. We're focused on job creation, 1 million jobs created in this term of parliament alone, more than any other term of parliament. But not only do we want more people in jobs, we want them to earn a decent wage. There's certainly more to do, but wages are heading in the right direction, with 4 quarters of wages growth after years of coalition wage stagnation. We've advocated for wages growth at every opportunity, and we've prioritised pay rises for aged care workers and early childhood educators who had been underpaid and undervalued for way too long. We want people to earn more and keep more of what they earn, as this is the best form of cost of living relief. We have record levels of people working, we have record levels of women working, and the pay gap is as narrow as it's ever been. Manufacturing jobs are up, industrial disputes are down, and the number of small businesses are up. We know there is more work to do, and we know that life is tough for many Australians right now. And that's why the Albanese Labor government has been focused on how to make appropriate investments in areas like Medicare and cheaper medicines and urgent care clinics to make sure that people are getting access to services that they need right now.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Walsh, first supplementary.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Minister. Central to our economic plan has been the Albanese Labor government's determination to get wages increasing. We've seen some good progress already, but after a decade of wage stagnation, there is more to do. Why is it so important to get wages moving again?
Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Well, we, over this side of the chamber, the Australian Labor Party, we always care about the workers, about the conditions that they work under and the wages they work under. And those opposite, and we can hear them start squealing now, squirming and squealing, because of their policy, which was, how do we stop working people getting proper wages? That was their economic policy. Stark contrast to our economic policy, which is that good, secure jobs with good wages growth matters to the economy, and it matters to working people. And so aged care workers, what happened for the previous decade? Nothing. Didn't see a role for government there to support the wages growth of a highly feminised, underpaid part of the economy. That's why this government has prioritised leaning in, arguing for wages increases for the minimum wage workers and for those essential workers in our economy.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Walsh, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Minister. As the Albanese Labor government continues to focus on helping with cost of living pressures, the Liberals and Nationals recklessly vote against cost of living relief at every opportunity. What challenges has the government faced in delivering cost of living relief for all Australians?
Thank you, Senator Walsh. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. I hear that they don't like the word reckless, but their voting record in this chamber has been reckless. And it paints the picture of what would happen were they to be on this side of the chamber again. We know the risk involved. They've been reckless. Remember, they wanted to go to an election over the tax cuts for every taxpayer in the country. That was so terrible, they wanted to call an election. They've argued against higher minimum wages, they've argued against the IR reforms, they've argued against pay rises for aged care workers, cheaper medicines. Who would have thought you could actually argue against cheaper medicines? But this group found a way to do it. Urgent care clinics, 24-hour nurses in aged care, tripling of the bulk billing incentive, the energy price relief plan, coming in here and complaining about energy prices, but then voting against energy bill relief. Of course, they voted on everything to do with housing and fee-free taste, if you can believe that.
Has expired. Senator Roberts.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Climate Change and Energy, Senator McAllister, and is regarding United Nations Conference of Parties number 29, COP29. Minister, COP29 marks 29 years of climate action. After 29 years, it must be starting to work. As a result of the measures implemented via COP agreements, how much have world temperatures been reduced?
Senator McAllister.
Thanks very much, President. And I think we should acknowledge that in asking this question, Senator Roberts, of course, starts from the premise that climate change is not real, is not caused by humans, and is not a problem that requires us to deal with it in any way. These are the positions he has put repeatedly.
Please resume your seat. Senator Roberts. Senator Roberts, wait until I call you. Senator Roberts, please go ahead.
Thank you. I don't need a dissertation on myself. I'm asking about temperatures.
Thank you, Senator Roberts. I'll listen to the minister's answers, but she has been answering your question. Minister, please continue.
Thanks very much, President. As I was saying, the starting point for Senator Roberts' question, as he has made very clear over his long period in this place, is that he does not believe in the science of climate change. He does not believe that that science has been demonstrated, and he does not believe that there needs to be—
Minister McAllister, please resume your seat. Senator Hanson.
question Senator McAllister's
point of
response
order?
there. Yes, it is point of order because she's repudiating Senator Roberts'
Senator
character
Hanson,
in her response.
Senator Hanson, that is a debating point. Please resume your seat. Minister McAllister, please continue.
So it's passing strange to be asked about the effectiveness of climate action because I don't believe that Senator Roberts actually wishes it to be successful. But, however, I will say this. At COP28, the information that delegates received was that the projections had been for a 4% increase, a 4-degree increase in temperature, and that had been reduced to 3 degrees based on the actions that had been taken by states to date. Now, 3 degrees average global warming is actually a very troubling number. It's a really It offers very, very disturbing consequences for many Australians, including Australians in your home state, Senator Roberts. There is a heatwave warning in place today, of course, in the Peninsula region of Queensland. There are flooding warnings in Queensland, and all of the advice before us suggests that the extreme weather events that Queenslanders are exposed to are only going to increase as a consequence of a warming climate. Now, it is in Australia's interests for there to be effective global action to contain warming. That's why
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Roberts, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. The minister seems unaware that Queensland had bigger floods in the 19th century. How many people did the Australian government send to UN's COP29? For clarity, just those your government paid for, and the cost of that, please, all up, including travel, accommodation, wages and expenses.
Thank you, Senator Roberts. Minister McAllister.
Thanks, President. I think, as the senator will know from when previous questions of this kind have been asked at estimates, the complete costs associated with travel to events such as these, multilateral forums, are generally not available until some time after the travel has been completed.
Senator Roberts, wait until you're called. Senator Roberts, second supplement. Senator Roberts, I've not finished. It's not like you. Senator Roberts, second supplementary.
Thank you. The communique from COP29 released overnight announced developed nations will ramp up annual payments to pay $300 billion annually in 2035, supposedly to meet the cost of transitioning developing nations, including India, with payment a combination of public and private money, loans and grants. Media reports suggest Australia's share is $8 billion. I don't see a government statement to that effect. So, Minister, how much taxpayers' money will be sent overseas as grants to discharge our obligation under the agreement made at COP29?
Thank you, Senator Roberts. Minister McAllister.
Thanks very much, President. Well, Australia does welcome the outcome at COP29 in Baku to agree a new finance goal to support developing countries. This goal was incredibly hard-fought, and it is not everything that everyone wanted. In fact, people wanted a range of outcomes, and there was, as there is always in such forums, a compromise. But it is an important step to support emissions reduction and development goals around the world. Now, we are proud to be back as a constructive actor on the world stage. It safeguards our national security, and our goal is to accelerate our transformation.
Minister McAllister, please resume your seat. Order. Order. Senator Canavan, I've called order 3 times. I've called you to order, and you've completely ignored me. Your interjections have completely drowned out the minister. Now, you either listen in silence or I invite you to leave the chamber. Minister McAllister, please continue.
As I've frequently said to Senator Roberts and others in this chamber, it is in our interests as a nation for there to be effective action to limit global warming. And I will say we are now cleaning up the mess that was left by 10 years of the Liberals and Nationals making a mockery of our position on the world stage.
Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. Minister, last week, in response to a question from Senator Canavan, you disputed recent ASIC figures which indicate insolvency rates in Australia are at a record high. You stated, what we're seeing at the moment is not a historical high, and that I'm just putting some facts on the table. Minister, unfortunately, the facts show that the average number of business insolvencies per quarter is the highest of any government since records began in 1999. The Albanese government has even managed to drive more businesses into the ground per quarter than even Kevin Rudd or Julia Gillard did during the GFC. This comes on top of the latest monthly data, which shows Labor has now broken its previous September record of the highest number of business insolvencies in a single month, rising to more than 1,300 in October. So, Minister, will you apologise for misleading the Senate and, more importantly, to those Australian businesses hitting the wall for whom you've said, apparently, it could be worse, even though that's not true?
Thank you, Senator Birmingham. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, Senator Birmingham. And I did not say that it could be worse, and so don't verbal me. I did not say the language that you used, as much as you'd like to argue that. The point I was making, and I did acknowledge that some businesses are becoming insolvent, and it's really difficult times for many businesses. I also made the point that we've seen many new small businesses start in the same period. The point I was making is that corporate insolvencies as a proportion of total companies stood at 0.37% for the period from November 23 to October 24. This rate is lower than the long-term historical average of 0.42. So that's the point I was making last week, which was data from November 2001 until October 2023, and the pre-COVID average of 0.46%. So that is the point I was making. So my answer to Senator Canavan was correct. It does remain higher than the COVID period averages, when a lot of companies obviously were being supported by taxpayer support during that time, and for good reason. And I went on to make the point about how the Labor government, the Albanese Labor government, has been working hard to make sure that we are investing and supporting small business where we can. So we've done that with energy bill rebates. We've had a bit of a standoff here about the instant asset write-off, but small business tell me that that is an important tax measure for them. And we will continue to support small business.
Has expired. Senator Birmingham, first supplementary.
Thanks, President. The recent COSBOA Small Business Perspective report revealed that surging operating costs have crunched margins, with 46% of businesses experiencing increased expenses and 57% of small businesses owners reporting high stress due to financial strain, with 1/3 not paying themselves due to cash flow issues. With a record number of small businesses hitting the wall, what's it going to take for your government to acknowledge that your plan isn't working and is hurting?
Thank you, Senator Birmingham. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Well, I think I made clear in the last answer that in our budgets we have been looking at what we can do to support small business, including by providing energy bill rebates, which is something that small business have argued for. Also, our investments in cyber wardens programs, which again is an area where small business have argued for. We've got the 20,000 instant asset write-off. I would draw attention to the fact that we've had 2.6 million small businesses in the June quarter, which is up on the number of small businesses when we came to government, which was at 2.44. And I'm not disputing that some businesses are finding it tough right now, which is why the government and the Minister Collins, have been so focused on responding to those areas of need. And I would say the worst thing for small business would be a $315 billion cut to the federal budget, which would force them into even more difficult times.
Senator Birmingham, second supplementary.
Thanks, President. Well, actually, in the same COSBOA report, small businesses reported the worst thing for them was rising energy costs, followed by increasing costs of doing business, inflation and the impact of interest rate increases. Now, prior to the last election, Mr Albanese promised cheaper mortgages, cheaper energy bills and promised not to touch multi-employer bargaining. Does the government accept any responsibility for the fact that its broken promises are what are truly hurting Australian businesses?
Thank you, Senator Birmingham. Minister Gallagher.
I would draw the minister's the Leader of the Opposition's attention to the statistics that I read out earlier, because whilst those opposite would like to paint the bleakest possible picture, I think it is important to look at the numbers as they stand and as they compare to previous records. In terms of energy bill rebates, we brought it in and you opposed it. So you come in here and you complain about small business and their energy costs, and in the same breath you oppose providing that support, and then you go and complain about government spending when that spending is targeted to helping small businesses with some of their costs, and you threaten to cut it. The worst possible thing that could happen to the economy and to small businesses who rely on a strong economy and to ensure customers and growth is the $315 billion worth of cuts that Peter Dutton and his colleagues are arguing for.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Hanson-Young.
Thank you. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. The parliamentary inquiry led by the late Peter Murphy reported 18 months ago, and yet the government has failed to implement the unanimous recommendations of that committee. And when I say unanimous, I mean bipartisan, tripartisan and everyone in and between. Does the government agree that gambling ads cause harm and fuel addiction? And if so, why have you delayed action again?
Thank you, Senator Hanson-Young. Minister Wong.
Well, Senator Hanson, I would sorry, Hanson-Young. My apologies. I would make a few points. The first is the government's done more in the last couple of years to tackle gambling harm than those opposite did for 9 years. We made it clear that the status quo is untenable and have been focused on addressing three key priorities: minimising children's exposure to wagering advertising, breaking the connection between wagering and sport, and reducing the saturation and targeting of wagering advertising. We've delivered significant online wagering harm reduction initiatives, including a verification for online wagering, banning the use of credit cards for online wagering, forcing companies to send their customers monthly activity statements outlining wins and losses, introducing new evidence-based taglines in wagering advertising, providing direct funding for specialist financial counselling to support people affected by problem gambling, introduced nationally consistent staff training, new minimum classifications for video games with gambling-like content, which will go live shortly, and launched BetStop, the National Self-Exclusion Register, which has been used by more than 32,000 Australians. So there has been a lot of action that has been undertaken. Obviously, there is more to do.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Hanson-Young, first supplementary.
Thank you. Government announced yesterday that you wouldn't be moving ahead with the ban on gambling advertising this year. That is the single most important thing you can do to stop and minimise the harm that gambling is doing to families. You're tinkering around the edges unless you ban the ads. When will you get on and do it? Are you going to do it this side of the election or not?
Thank you, Senator Hanson-Young. Minister Wong.
Thank you. And the senator really answered her own question with the opening, which is the government obviously has a very full agenda for these next 4 days of the parliament, and the government is focused on making sure we pass the legislation which is before the parliament, which is why obviously this is not one of the reforms that is currently before the parliament.
Senator Hanson-Young, second supplementary.
Thank you. Will the government rule out taking donations or having any more dinners, lunches, birthday celebrations with the gambling lobby before you act on banning the ads?
Senator Hanson-Young, I'm sure you are aware that that question is not Senator Wong's ministerial responsibility. However, I will give the minister an opportunity to answer in whatever way she thinks fit.
Well, I don't know who's having birthday celebrations, but I can tell you I don't think people having birthday celebrations with lobbyists would be most people's idea of fun, to be honest with you. With all due respect for everybody,
Order.
But what I would say is in relation to donation reform, Senator Farrell has worked tirelessly across the parliament on this, and I'd invite Senator Hanson-Young to support the legislation in the parliament which deals with donation reform.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Sheldon.
My question is to the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations, Senator Watt. Going into Christmas, cost of living pressures are front of mind for all Australians as they budget for gifts and plan their festive meals. What is the Albanese Labor government doing to help Australians earn more and keep more of what they earn this festive season?
Thank you, Senator Sheldon. Minister Watt.
Well, thanks, President, and thanks, Senator Sheldon. With now 1 month exactly until Christmas, many Australians are turning their minds to their Christmas budgets. Presents for the kids, travel costs to see loved ones, a Christmas ham, maybe even a few prawns for lunch. And the costs of getting together for Christmas can certainly add up. And we understand that this Christmas will be tough for many Australians, even after the cost of living relief that our government has provided and even after all of that was opposed by the opposition. Our government's economic plan is all about helping people with their cost of living while fighting inflation. And just as we're focusing on bringing costs down, we've also worked hard to get wages up. And I'm pleased to say that ahead of the final pay cycles of the year, before the festive shopping season officially begins, Australians' wages are again higher due to strong action taken by the Albanese government. New figures show that this festive season, the average Australian is now earning a six-figure salary at more than $103,000, an increase of $8,273 per year, or $159 per week since the election of the Albanese government. And I'm surprised to hear the opposition so unhappy that Australians are earning higher wages. Although I guess I shouldn't be surprised, because you've always opposed higher wages, and it would seem that you still are. Along with delivering a tax cut for every Australian worker, the Albanese government has changed the law on a range of issues that were stifling wage growth under the coalition, including our same job, same pay laws, getting tough on wage theft, pay rises for aged care workers and early childhood educators, and 3 above-inflation increases to the national minimum wage. The result has seen wage increases recorded for both minimum wage and award wage workers in recent months. More than Senator Hume, we'll get to you in the supplementary about what you think about wage rises. Just hold your horses. There's plenty of quotes to come, especially from Senator Hughes when it comes to wages and helping working people.
Thank you, Minister. Order. 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 Senator Watt. Senator Sheldon, first supplementary.
I note that Mr Dutton and the Liberals believe wage increases would be, and I quote, the worst thing for Australians. What is the Albanese Labor government doing to support Australians into well-paid, secure work, and why is this so important?
Thank you, Senator Sheldon. Minister Watt.
Yes, well, that's right, Senator Sheldon. Peter Dutton's Shadow Finance Minister, Senator Hume, said that wage increases would be, and I quote, the worst thing for Australians. How in touch the Liberals are with Australians out there. And as cost of living pressures hit working Australians, it's vital that wages stay ahead of inflation. And that's why the Albanese government has been so focused on getting wages moving again after 10 years of coalition wage stagnation. Now, you would think that at a time when Australians are doing it tough, all political parties would support increasing wages. But weirdly, Peter Dutton and the coalition have tried to block every single cost of living measure this year, and they've also tried to block every step we've taken to improve wages. And now Mr Dutton and the coalition are recklessly promising to cut pay and conditions for millions of Australian workers. They've promised to cut casual rights, cut the right to disconnect, cut same job, same pay, cut multi-employer bargaining, and they're considering making it easier to sack workers as well.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Minister, I do remind you— Order! Order! Senator, I do remind you to refer to others, to refer to people in the other House by their correct titles. Senator Agra, I invite you to make a contribution at some other point, but not question time. Senator Sheldon, second supplementary.
I note that Mr Dutton and the Liberals have proudly stated, on the coalition side of the chamber, we always stand with the employers of Australia. Now, going into festive season, what is the Albanese Labor government doing to stand with Australian workers and families to put more money in their pockets, and what are the key barriers to achieving this?
Minister Watt.
Thank you, Senator Sheldon. Well, while the Liberals and Nationals may say that they always stand with the employers of Australia, the Labor Party supports cooperative workplaces where both employers and workers win. And right now, due to our workplace changes opposed by Mr Dutton, wages are up, jobs are up, inflation is down and industrial action is down. Mr Dutton's reckless opposition to our workplace changes only hurts Australians who are doing it tough. And at every turn, an arrogant Mr Dutton wants to put his hand in your pocket and rip out thousands of dollars. He wants to recklessly cut your pay. He wants to take away your tax cuts. He wants you to pay more for essential things like medicine, power and childcare. Mr Dutton is the Grinch who wants to steal Christmas from every Australian worker. If Mr Dutton had been in power over the past 2 years, the average Australian household would be $7,600 worse off. Mr Dutton just doesn't add up for working people. When Australians are under pressure, Peter Dutton will make things worse.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Duniam.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Climate Change and Energy, Senator McAllister. Last week, you stated that without Labor's temporary one-off energy bill subsidy, electricity prices would have risen by 15.4% since June of 2023. Minister, can you please clarify how much electricity prices will rise once this one-off subsidy ends just after the election?
Thank you, Senator Duniam. Minister McAllister.
Criminally hid it from people.
Well, thanks, President. Energy prices are a serious issue for households and they're a serious issue for businesses, and our #1 priority is delivering cost-of-living relief for households and businesses, including through the support that we're providing for energy bills. Now, people are doing it tough, but we are seeing green shoots, and as you've indicated in your question to me, there are some indication that we are seeing electricity prices fall. The challenge is, of course, that those on the other side voted against that energy price relief. They voted against it and they want to wind those rebates back that are going out at the moment to Australian families and to Australians and businesses. And their plan would actually mean higher power prices. Now, I think the most interesting thing, of course, when you're asked about price, is that our plan, of course, long-term for the electricity system is to ensure that we are making investments in the cheapest form of new generation that there is, and that is firmed renewables.
Senator McKenzie.
But the opposite, of course, is an utterly reckless plan to invest in the most
Minister
expensive
McAllister,
form of energy that—
Senator Duniam.
Just a point of order on relevance. I asked about how much power prices are going to be going up after the subsidy comes off, not about all the other extraneous matters.
Thank you, Senator Duniam. The Minister, you talked about energy prices and the Minister is being relevant to your question. Order. Order across the chamber. Minister McAllister, please continue.
Thanks, President. When we talk about the future of the energy system, the truth is that the plan that's being propagated by those opposite is for the most expensive form of energy that there is to be delivered in more than a decade's time, well after it is required. So, of course, independent analysis suggests that that could add at least $1,200 to the average bill for a four-person household. It would, of course, deliver less than 4% of the energy that we actually required. It won't be delivered until 2040, according to CSIRO, and it could cost $600 billion, a source of funding for which has yet to be provided by a coalition that is advocating for a scheme that is uncosted, unspecified and will occur on some unknown timetable.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Duniam, first supplementary.
Thank you very much, President. Minister, given electricity prices are being artificially suppressed by the 15.4%, according to your estimates, they're likely to go up by at least that much or more over the 12 months from June of 2024, when your subsidy comes to an end. Will the government make taxpayers foot the bill by extending its payments for another year at a cost of $3.5 billion, or will electricity users just foot the bill directly instead?
Thank you, Senator Duniam. Minister McAllister.
Well, President, the government will continue to do everything that we responsibly can to help households and businesses at a time that we acknowledge is genuinely difficult for many, many people. It's been our singular focus over the course of this year and indeed the year before, making sure that households and businesses are supported by delivering cost-of-living relief and that little bit of extra support, all of which you have opposed.
Order.
All of which you have opposed. It doesn't matter whether it's cheaper medicines, cheaper childcare, higher wages, energy bill relief, tax cuts. All of those things have been met with opposition by those opposite. And so when people talk to us about prices and about the future and about cost of living, there is only one group of people in this chamber who have consistently and persistently sought to deal with the challenges that Australians are facing, and it's the people on this side of the chamber. And everybody sitting over there can go to an election or go into the next year understanding that they
thank you,
have
Minister.
done very, very little indeed.
Senator Duniam, second supplementary.
Thanks, President. Minister, the Prime Minister sold an energy plan to Australians at the last election in which he promised 97 times that Labor's plans would cut at least $275 off household energy bills by 2025, about 20% at that time for an average bill in Sydney. What's your message to those households who are now paying 10% more in real terms since 2022 and whose only bill relief is delivered via a one-off subsidy at the expense of rate cuts instead of better energy system they were promised by you?
Thank you, Senator Duniam. Minister McAllister.
I'm asked about the energy system, and I'm asked about the future of the energy system, and it's a curious line of questioning from a group of people whose proposition is that they will deliver the most expensive form of energy available in a decade's time. And it's curious, too, to reflect on the actual record. Because what was the program, what was the approach taken by those opposite over the decade that they were in power? Well, it was to sweat coal assets. It was to sweat coal assets. And what did that produce? It produced 4 gigawatts of dispatchable power, leaving the system over the period, one coming on. It produced 24 coal-fired power stations, bringing forward or announcing their closure dates, and not a thing was done about it. And do you know what their plan is for the next decade? It's to do exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing. Just sweat those assets, people, and you'll get exactly the same result that you got the last time you tried it.
Thank you. Senator O'Neill.
Thank you very much, President. And my question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Regional Development, Local Government and Territories, Senator McCarthy. Despite what those opposite might think, our regions are more than just a grant program. How's the Albanese Labor government working to improve the lives of people in the regions?
Order! 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 Order across the chamber. Senator McKenzie, which part of me calling order did not apply to you? Minister McCarthy.
The Excel out.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator O'Neill for the question. From day one, the Albanese Labor government has been getting on with the job, President, of delivering for regional Australia. We've delivered on our commitment to restore integrity and transparency in our regional grant programs, because now every community, regardless of their postcode, can apply. The $600 million Growing Regions program, the $400 million Regional Precincts and Partnership program, and more. As someone who drives for hours across the Northern Territory, I know how important it is to improve the safety of our regional roads. We're progressively doubling the Roads to Recovery program over the next 5 years to $1 billion annually in the Senator's home state of New South Wales. This means that councils will be receiving $1.2 billion over the next 5 years, a $461 million increase. We're also increasing the Road Black Spot program from $110 million to $150 million per year, meaning more money for improving some of the most dangerous sections of our roads. We have launched the new Safer Local Roads and Infrastructure program with $200 million available each year, a $50 million boost. And we have delivered an additional $250 million to regional councils through Phase 4, President, of the Local Roads and Community Infrastructure program. We know on this side of the chamber how important connectivity is in our regions, which is why we have a record investment. We're delivering a further $2.4 billion to expand NBN full fibre to an additional 1.5 million premises around Australia, 660,000 of those being in the region.
Thank you, Minister. Senator O'Neill, first supplementary.
Thank you, Minister, for that fulsome account. But it's not only road and community infrastructure, which is so essential to our regional areas, it's access to services. So what is the Albanese Labor government doing to boost service delivery in the regions?
Thank you, Senator O'Neill. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator. Yes, we on this side of the chamber understand that regional development isn't just about investing in our roads or infrastructure. It's also about investing in our people and enhancing service delivery. When we came to office, people in regional towns couldn't get in to see their local GP.
Shocking.
After a decade of neglect, President, we know we can't fix this overnight, but we're getting on with the job. Our landmark investments to strengthen Medicare have seen an additional 2.2 million bulk billed visits in regional and rural visits since November last year. Would you like me to repeat that? That's a pretty significant number. 2.2 million bulk billed visits in regional and rural areas since November last year. We are getting more doctors where we need them most by waiving HECS fees for health practitioners that work
Minister.
in
the time
regions.
for answering has expired. Senator O'Neill's second supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. And our regions need to attract and retain skilled workers to ensure they can continue to deliver these important services.
Senator O'Neill, please resume your seat. The senator is entitled to make her— Senator Ruston, your disorderly conduct during question time today is, setting new records. I invite you to either listen in silence or leave the chamber. Senator O'Neill will put her question in silence. Please continue, Senator O'Neill.
Thank you, President. And it is important to talk about the regions and to listen to the answers. Our regions need to attract and retain skilled workers to ensure they
please resume your seat. I would have thought, and I think that was you, Senator McKenzie, but Senator Henderson. Order. Order. Order on my right. Order. I would have thought, Senator Henderson, if you heard me calling one senator to account, that you might be able to work out that that really does apply to all senators, including you. Senator O'Neill, please continue.
I'll try again for a third time. Stand up for people in the regions against those opposite. Our regions need to attract and retain skilled workers to ensure they can continue to deliver these services.
Has expired. Senator O'Neill, I didn't invite you to— Senator Wong?
I'd request that Senator O'Neill be allowed to repeat her question, given how much she was interjected upon by the opposition.
Senator O'Neill, I'm going to invite you to complete the question to the point you got to. You have a very clear voice, so I was able to follow, but the interjections were disorderly. So please.
Thank you very much, President. So, Minister, what is the Albanese Labor government doing to allow people to stay and train in our regional towns?
Thank you, Senator O'Neill. Order. Order. Senator Watt. Senator Watt, I've just called you. Minister McCarthy, please continue.
Thank you, President. Well, we want people to train at home and continue working locally because you shouldn't have to leave home to build your career. We are bringing university closer to students living in the regions, investing in 20 more regional university hubs. Our fee-free TAFE has already supported over 500,000 people nationally, including over 127,000 in our regions. That's why we will make fee-free TAFE permanent. Just because you're getting it for free doesn't mean you don't value it, unlike what those opposite might think. So to attract and retain the workers of our communities, we need to build more housing. You don't care about the regions. Obviously don't want to hear about it. Never want to know any success about the regions.
Minister, order. Order. Order across the chamber. Would like there to be silence for the next 8 seconds. Minister McCarthy, please continue.
Thank you, President. Well, to attract and retain the workers our communities need, we are building more housing. $32 billion in housing initiatives to help Australians to build, rent and buy.
Time. Thank you, Minister.
President, I ask that further questions be placed on notice.